Well, welcome, Diane, to the Leaders Who Care series. It is so wonderful to have you here.
Oh, Mark, I'm really grateful to be included in this terrific series. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I think people are going to learn a lot of good things from you and your perspective. So let's start by, if you would, introducing yourself in the sense of where you are, where you're from, family. Maybe there's something you've never told anybody you want to reveal now. And this would be a good place to do it. I'm just saying. And, and then we'll get into the business stuff. How's that?
Absolutely. So I'll start with what I do for a living. I work at CarMax. We are the largest used car dealer in the country, probably in the world. And I've been there 20 years next month. I started there as their first litigator when they spun off for Circuit City. Not a lot of people know that, but CarMax was the brainchild of Circuit City. And of course, Circuit City is unfortunately long gone. But we have survived and really thrived. And I started as the first litigator. I took on many roles within the legal department. I became the company's first chief human resources officer, and most recently added the general counsel and chief compliance officer to my portfolio, as well as—
I'm just going to interrupt you, and we'll talk
Yes.
more about that. Now tell me about you and
Yes.
family, where you're from.
So absolutely. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. And I guess what I don't share with many people is when I left for high school, I was determined never to come back. And of course, full circle, I've now been living and working in Richmond, Virginia for 20 years, but it is a completely different place than when I grew up, and a much better place and a much more progressive environment to live and grow and work in a wonderful community. I have 2 children and 2 stepchildren and 3 dogs. So we have a very, very full house. Our oldest is now a freshman in college, but the rest of them still have a little bit to go before we are empty nesters. And
that's the kids, not the dogs, right?
yes, the dogs, their dogs are very small. I tease people and say, my 3 dogs probably weigh less than your just normal sized dog. They're all, our smallest is 2.5 pounds. They're small. They can often be thought of as squirrels more than dogs, but they're fun. It's a fun house for sure. We have a good time as a family.
No,
and I'm lucky because I didn't realize this when I was leaving Richmond, how lucky I am to be back here, because I still have my parents still living here, and my sister just moved back. So it's definitely been a good move all these 20 years later.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have an aunt who's like a second mom. She's 95 in Montreal. And she talks about that a lot. Like, it was so great when everybody was together in the same town.
Yes, yes.
So you should—
special times.
It is. Yeah, be grateful for that. And we had— I have 3 boys and now a daughter-in-law. And so we had when I was married, I'm divorced now, but we had 3 boys, two Dobermans, 2 miniature pinchers, and a bird.
Whoa, you had a busy house too.
Yeah, it was pretty busy, but it was fun. It was fun.
Yes.
Busy,
Our kids are advocating for another dog. 4 kids, 4 dogs. That's their mantra. I'm like, no.
That works.
Yes, I've had enough.
Well, if each one takes the responsibility for one.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice, Mark?
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know that feeling. So what were you like as a kid or a teenager even? Did you have a passion towards legal TV shows or legal rules? Were you were you organizing friends for projects? Did you like cars or what?
Oh yeah, these are all great questions. So if I think back on my teenage years, I certainly was compliance minded, and my parents were very grateful for that. For sure. I am the youngest of 4 granddaughters, and I saw my cousins and sister tangle with the family law, and so I realized pretty quickly that being a rule follower was going to inure to my benefit. But I'd say, like, when I think back on those times, a couple things that have really kind of reflected in my career is there are 2 things about me. Like, I constantly was a multitasker. I swam in high school. I was head of the student government. If I wasn't busy, I felt like idle and sort of lost. And that has really been a huge help as I've grown my career and taken on new things. And then secondly, I definitely had some community activism in my day. I'll give you an example. I went to a small high school. It was all girls when I was there. And in my junior year, the high school wanted to merge with the brother school. And we had classes already. When you were in high school, you got to have classes with the boys, certain classes, others not. So I was used to certainly boys in the classroom, but I really felt strongly like this was a mistake, that this school was going to lose its charm and lose something about its culture if it went co-ed. And most importantly, I advocated in front of the board that the reason they shouldn't go co-ed is because girls were going to lose leadership positions. Now, this was, before women in the workplace as extensively as they are now. And of course, you go into every high school and practically every student government head is a girl these days, because boys are like, you can have that.
Exactly.
But at the time, it was like a very serious concern of mine, because I had grown so much as a child leading, being president of the class or student government or what have you. And so I just thought it was really important. And while they decided to go co-ed, which was obviously a cost savings measure and made sense for them financially at the time, they did reserve leadership roles for both girls and boys. So now in every class, even to this day, they have a girls student government president and a co-boy senior student government president. So opportunities for everybody. And that, of course, is, I think back on that as I think about my own career and also, the role I play in the company. So
that was avant-garde, as we would say in Montreal. That was ahead of its time. So
yes, it absolutely was. Definitely.
Good for you on that. I mean, we'll get into it. We do a lot in diversity and with women and all that too. And but it's taken a long time for everybody to get there. And we'll talk about it. So in the meantime, tell us about your journey, if you would, when you're focusing on law, but then it kind of moved towards taking on what we call the human element.
Yes.
CSR, diversity, HR, and a focus on people and culture. So with that background, why do you do what you do?
Oh, yeah. So, well, I'll just say I'll talk just a tiny bit about my journey, because it's not particularly unique in CarMax, but I think when people hear about it, they're like, are you kidding? How did you go from there to, here to there? So I started as the company's first litigator. And as people left the organization, they would ask me like, hey, would you consider taking on government affairs? Would you take on regulatory compliance? Stuff I had never done before and had no functional expertise. When you're a lawyer, your value is in your functional expertise. That's what makes you unique and special. So it's incredibly difficult to go out of my comfort zone and do things I'd never done before. But also very exciting and, really pleased to be given the opportunity. And then when our current CEO, Bill Nash, became the CEO, he used to have a variety of accountabilities, one of which was HR. And because talent and culture was so important to him, he created the role of the Chief Human Resources Officer, which we had never had before. This was in 2017, I believe. And we had never had that role before. He created it and he asked me to take that role on. Now, the interesting thing about that, while I had risen in the ranks of the legal department, I'd never been a direct report of the CEO. I'd never been on our senior executive team. I'd never done employment law, benefits, executive compensation. I mean, I was way out of my element, and I was being elevated as the only member of senior team who was also a woman. So this was like a big opportunity. And, I think if anybody but the CEO had asked me to do it, I'd been like, this is even, I've taken on a lot of things in the organization, and happily, this seems like too big for me. But it was the best career move I've ever made. I mean, I've always had a passion for talent. When I was in the legal department, I would be part of like new associates coming in, whether it's legal or elsewhere, and they would want to talk to leaders. And I was sort of in that rotation, and they'd ask me, what are you most proud of? And I'd say, the thing I'm most proud of is exporting talent out of the legal department into the business so they can add even more value than they did as the business. And I said that with all authenticity, because there was such gratification of seeing lawyers and non-lawyers leave the legal department, not because they didn't like what they were doing, because what they could do was so much more exciting for them. And that I had even a small part in that was really just hugely gratifying for me. So in the CHRO role, when people ask you, well, what excited you about it? It was being able to do that exporting of talent on a huge scale. Across at the time was 22,000 associates. We're now at over 30,000 associates. And just to think that globally about talent and culture was super exciting for me. And then just most recently, I've my mentor and just one of my favorite managers ever and leaders, the general counsel, left the organization, and I got the opportunity to be the general counsel and the chief compliance officer. And I'll tell you, when I was going through the legal department, that was my dream job. You know, I get to be the general counsel, but now I know this is my dream job. I get to do HR and asset protection and corporate social responsibility and just wonderful things. And I also get to kind of be at home and be in the legal department too. So that's my journey. And why do I do what I do is just an excellent question. You know, I'm motivated by the people around me. We have such talented folks here who are curious, who want to help each other, who want to support each other. And we've built this amazing culture, which I can't take credit for as head of HR. We believe our culture is a responsibility of every single person, from our frontline associates to our CEO. And we're just there to support that culture and make sure it's scaffolded so that it can grow. And that's what gets me up every day in the morning and gets me motivated to come to work.
Now that's spectacular. I can kind of relate because I got my CPA and then I went to Deloitte. And the unfortunate part, I was really good at accounting and tax and all that, but I hated it.
Right.
So the managers, the partners always wanted me on stuff. But one partner took me aside, kind of reminds me of your CEO, and said, "You're really good at this, I know, but you're not liking it, are you?" And so that's a little bit different than you, because I liked it because I knew what I was doing and whatnot, but I liked the business side better and the people side better. So he took me aside and said, "I got it," and got me into all sorts of other things, dealing with clients and everything. So it became all about people.
Right.
Just the bottom line. And
really is like how the world goes around, right? If we just think about it very simply, it's all about the people. So yeah.
And you know, it's taken decades. We talked about this a little bit at the beginning. It's taken decades for leaders and even investors to recognize that there's all types of capital that they can put into impact. There's the HR, the CSR dollars, there's the investment dollars, there's the philanthropy, foundations, etc. And it's all that impact. It's all vital for attracting and retaining top talent to come to you, because in what we do, for sure, in representing clients as leaders who care, if you will, people are looking for places where they can make money and do good and make a difference at the same time. So can you describe a little bit how, what I would call you follow your cultural compass, where leaders care about and they demonstrate their corporate values, and that helps you create compelling experiences for your employees, which helps keep them in the company?
Yeah, I mean, it's that like vicious cycle that's so pure of, if you live your values and you hold everybody else accountable to living your values, you're going to attract the right type of talent in the door. I'll say this about my experience, and I have two very different experiences. One, my law firm experience. I've only had two jobs, or worked for two companies. So I caveat my comments this way, but my law firm culture, which was a culture around people were pretty expendable. And I am sure that is not the case now. That was like probably everywhere across the country, accounting firms, law firms, all professional services. It's, we met, when I started, in my orientation, the head of the firm said, look around you, only, 1 of 10 of you will still be here in 5 years. It was this like, work really hard. You'll get to go do things really exciting in your life by working really hard and achieving, but it's not going to be here. And then I came to CarMax, and with a very different culture. And that culture was it was a startup at the time. So every person is, incredibly valuable because there's so few of us, but also their whole essence, our whole essence, was to disrupt an industry that had no ethics. And when we just started CarMax, it was to bring an ethical culture to an industry that was full of games and didn't treat customers and didn't treat their employees very well. And we built this culture based on transparency and integrity. So how we treat our customers, it's how we treat our associates. And it's this wonderful cycle. And I'll just give you a few examples of the types of programmatic things that comes out of living your values. So when at my old law firm, when you were a partner, you got all the perks, right? Like everything great happened to you once you got all the money and you got all the all these extra benefits and you got to fly first class, all that stuff. Our CEO has the same benefits as our frontline associates, the technicians that are turning the wrench, the sales consultants that are helping our customers, exact same benefits, except for one thing. he gets to use the plane to travel, which is a benefit for us as an organization. And he's the only person that gets to use the plane, and on a very limited capacity from a personal standpoint. But obviously, we need him all over the country for a professional standpoint. But other than that, every single one of us is treated the same from a benefit standpoint. And that just sends a message to your organization, right? It's things like that. The other thing is we really believe in a listening culture. Bill, our CEO, gets up in front and does town halls all the time. And one of the things he says, which I love, and I've told him, don't take this out of your spiel, is all the great ideas I had, he's talking about himself, are long gone. Like, I need those ideas from you. You are working with our customers day in and day out, and you're the ones that can bring the best ideas to give a better customer experience, a better associate experience, and to make us a better company. And we really live those values of listening, whether you are a manager of, a business office associate, or you're a manager of a lawyer. We all take this very much of a listening approach. And we hold people accountable that if you talk more than you listen as a leader, we've got a problem. We've got a problem. So it's things like that you bring to your culture, that you show that you can walk the talk. And then if I could, just for a second, on the philanthropy side, which I'm incredibly passionate about, even before I had corporate social responsibility in my midst, we take that listening culture to our philanthropy side. So I'll give you two great examples. After the very unfortunate murder of George Floyd, we made a financial commitment, but we wanted to make sure that commitment was going to be in how we were going to address social injustice and racial equity issues, was going to mean something to our associates. We have over 60% of our population was diverse. We wanted to be able to say, we are doing what you want us to do in this space. This is important to us as a company because it's important to you. And then another one, which is one of our favorite initiatives, we give away every year care cards to our associates, $50, $75, whatever it is in that moment. And they can donate it to any organization of their choosing.
I like it.
And yes, and they love it. And they have competitions within their stores or their work units of like, which organization is going to get the most from the care card giving. And then they have volunteer team builders based on which organizations got the most from their care cards. So it's a really great culture building opportunity. And if you have a listening culture, you can prove that by doing things like this.
Do you have the nonprofits standing outside with signs? Me.
No, but we have a lot of folks in the organization who are deeply involved in nonprofits on boards, or even like have created their own nonprofits. So they're doing a lot of advocating for sure.
I bet, but that's good. That's advocating you want to have type of thing.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. And I'd love to hear how you measure the performance and productivity, because that value that you're talking about extends to employees. I remember Jack Ma, who was the founder of Alibaba, and when he went public, he made a speech about that we have it all wrong here, starting with the shareholders. You got to start with your employees.
Yes.
And then that'll get to the customers and the shareholders type of thing. So how do you go, as a company, how do you go about measuring performance and productivity, and how the culture in that extends to the customers?
Yes. So our CEO, before the one we have now, used to say all the time, and I think he stole it from somewhere, which is, if we take care of our associates, they'll take care of our customers, and the rest will take care of itself. Mm-hmm. And there was not an associate from anywhere in the company who did not have that mantra, because all leaders would use it. We'd steal it from our CEO, and wherever he stole it from, it works. So we have for many, many years believed in that philosophy that if you take care of your people, they will take care of the rest. And they are a differentiator for you, particularly in customer service businesses like we have. But I would say this on like, how do you measure things? One of the ways we do it, of course, is engagement surveys. This is a big piece of what we do, is surveying our associates, not just like one annual big engagement survey. We do more frequent surveys, but we also, whenever we do a change, we survey our associates during that change. Did we do it well? Did we not do it well? How can we improve it? And then before we roll it out to another region or another store, we iterate on that change to perfect it. So by the time it's rolled out to the entire company, they're getting the benefit of how our associates think about what that change is. And change is such a big piece of every company's culture right now, the more you can get that right, the more your customers are going to benefit, and therefore your shareholders are going to benefit. And our associates, like we've said, give us the best ideas in this way. One of the things people ask me are, particularly in a remote world, is, are you measuring productivity of your remote associates? Now, the vast majority of our associates are frontline associates. So they are interacting with, the public and customers all the time. So there's no need to have any remote access to what they're doing to measure productivity. But we do not measure productivity in the way I know a lot of companies do in monitoring, putting spyware, if you will, on people's computers and monitoring how they're behaving when they're not actually in the office and what productivity comes out of them. The way we measure productivity for our knowledge workers, if you will, is entirely based on results. And we have an agile workforce, particularly in our innovation world. And every 2 weeks, we know if they've met the objectives that were set the 2 weeks prior. And we hold ourselves accountable with OKRs and the agile methodology, and that's very effective. Now, could we put in place spyware? We could, but it would be so counter to our culture, because it's, I think, fundamentally, if you build trust with your associates, you trust them and they trust you, they're going to stay with you and they're going to go the extra mile for you. And so I would be really, really hesitant to put in place something absent some reason, meaning, some associate we think is doing something unethical or nefarious. That's, an investigation. That's different. But we would not want to put that in place as a regular practice.
You raised the big word trust, and I do a lot of sports analogies for whatever reason. Well, not for whatever reason. I played hockey and whatever since I was little, and learned a lot from playing and coaching and great coaches and stuff. And there's an expression, trust the process. And a coach, if he shows or she shows that he really trusts the players, and the players get that coach really believes in them and trusts them, then they will trust the process he's putting in, and they'll do well. The thing about remote was, I found, and we probably have too, is they gave leaders an opportunity to show that they really trusted them even more, because they're not there anymore.
Yes.
And the real good ones will perform even better because of that.
That's right. And we had to get flexible, right? Not just because of COVID, but because the entire workforce was changing, even pre-COVID. We had to get flexible on, okay, somebody can't do, the 4 to 6 o'clock time slot, but they're going to do the 8 to 10 time slot. And do we really care? Right? In some roles, yes, you do care, because you need to be online to be servicing our stores, for instance. But in many roles, it's like you get the work done and you do it at a high quality. We shouldn't care when that is to a large extent, as long as you're not negatively impacting the team. Because we do a lot of teamwork, and big capital T and small team, and the collaborative environment can be very difficult if somebody's not available, obviously. But, we work through that. And it's a one-on-one relationship. Everybody says this and it's become cliche, but gosh, I think in COVID, it really, really, I don't know, hit me harder, is that people don't leave companies, they leave their managers. Right. And so those that really leveraged this moment of during COVID of really relating to their associates and really being vulnerable leaders, I think won out. They won out on that they were able to retain associates who had many, many choices, and maybe still do have many choices because of the labor market.
And we get that all the time. And, the half part of our business being executive search, where the candidates will, and I'll get into that, will know, and we'll basically, how was I going to go with that? Ask about, they're professionals and they know that they got to get it done. And if the person trusts them to get it done, great. And they know if they have to be in a meeting, they know that. In fact, remote has had people were even working more type of thing. They'll work.
Certainly during COVID, they did. I think the studies are saying now that that's trending back to normal, but yes, I mean, and one of the reasons might be because you didn't have anything else to do. So, your company may be in crisis. Certainly we were, we had, 75% of our stores were shut down by the government. What are we going to do to help our associates during this time? And what are we going to do to survive as a company? So we were, in a crisis moment. That's going to make you work harder. But I don't know. There wasn't much to do during COVID. So work was, in many ways, a nice reprieve for folks.
Yeah, no kidding. What are your priority initiatives around CSR that that you think really impact your employees and customers?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's really interesting, right? If you look at our business, one can argue, and is that we are the ultimate recyclers, right? Given that we
Right.
only sell a used product and we recondition it to a high quality. And so we're keeping something out of a junkyard, essentially. That's one thing, but that's probably not enough. Like that got us through like the beginning of our journey as
Right.
a corporate citizen. But what we're really focused on now is how to be an EV leader, right? Is like, how do you, this may be like, I don't know how much you follow the EV worlds, but one interesting fact is like an EV is so heavy. So you can't, if you need to recondition an EV vehicle and get it on a lift, a traditional lift can't lift it.
Well,
If you need to transport it across the country, there's all these limitations on transporters. You have to use that transporter at half capacity to transport EVs, which of course is terrible for the environment.
yeah,
So, right. So there's
Yeah.
all these interesting intricacies related to how can we be a leader in the EV space in a way that is sustainable in all parts of the ecosystem, transporting it, servicing it, charging it. What can we do there? That's a space that's really invigorating for our associates and very consistent with what our business is. So I'd say that's like a big priority for us. And then there's the other things that, we're working on in the CSR space around diversity and inclusion, which so many companies have been, and we have as well. And there's just lots of great work. There always will be, unfortunately, lots of great work to be done in that space. But what I'm finding is we do a lot of training, and that's what comes out of our D&I team. But frankly, it's just how to be a good manager and how to be a good employee, and like lessons on empathy, lessons on compassion, trust, things of that nature, which aren't like unique to a diverse population in any way. But in this world right now is what people need and want from their employers.
Yeah, you're right on the money. Kind of gives me a good segue into the next part. We obviously in our firm purposely work with leaders who care. That's who we select as clients. Because then we can help them get the best people, because we can help them make a big impact in their local, regional, global, community type of thing. Candidates ask for proof now. Really good candidates ask for proof, not like, well, of course we're a diverse whatnot, open door policy to everyone's like whatever, stuff like that. Right. They don't accept that stuff. They want to know what programs, what examples. And I get this question, especially from most women, minorities of women, saying, I can do the job really well, and we wouldn't present to anybody that doesn't do the job. But will I be able to work on your most significant projects? Will I be able to maybe even fail and come back and succeed and get recognized for it and really truly show my stuff? That's what I'm excited about. Am I going to be recognized, for that? And so I want to know your thoughts on that, how executives and leaders, and even women, up and coming women leaders who care, not to be cute, but even them, can be more effective in their roles in markets to create those that type of impact and opportunity.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, which I always talk to young people who want to do that. Like they want to showcase their work. We do a lot of things that gives people an opportunity to showcase their work. That, for instance, every 2 weeks, we have what we call a showcase, and all the executives show up at the showcase and you get to showcase your work. And it's in the innovation space, the technology, data analytics, even our marketing space. So there are lots of places that you can do that. So there are things companies can do to like scratch that itch for people of wanting to really share the great work. The other beautiful thing about doing these showcases is people learn about what's being done and they say, hey, wow, that's being automated in that area. That would make so much sense in my area. Can you help me figure that out? So it's been a great way to really share best practices as well. But one thing you said in the beginning, which really struck me, was this piece of doing work that other people don't want to do, or that you don't even like yourself, and figuring out how to find the joy in it, right? Is, I was a tax litigator when I was at my old law firm. I mean, if that sounds just dreadful to you, you are so right. It is. Now, for the right people, it's perfect. But I think what was great about it for me from a career standpoint is not very many people wanted to do it. We had like clients clamoring for that expertise at the law firm. So I didn't have to do rainmaking, which was not going to be something I was really interested in doing too much. Certainly not as a junior in my career. And I didn't really know anything about tax, but I learned Section 453 of the Internal Revenue Code, and I learned it to death. And while the subject didn't excite me, like what I got to do did. And so I think for young people who can find those holes that maybe not everybody's filling, either from you bring a unique skill or because people actually don't want to do it, but it's high value. Oh man, you can soar. You can soar. And I've seen it at CarMax time and time again, where somebody sees something broken and everybody's like, well, that's broken. I don't want to mess with that. And somebody goes in, typically young, hungry,
exactly,
great cultural fit, and they just soar. So that's often the advice I give to young people, and especially to young women too.
Especially when someone says, "Oh, we've tried it, it doesn't work," and whatever.
Yes.
Really? Okay, I can try it.
That's right. That's right. And the beauty of a culture where you have a fail fast and hopefully inexpensively, which is the goal, right? Fail fast and cheaply. And we learn from your failures. That's a pretty safe place to go in. Something that's broken that everybody wants it to be fixed, and they're willing to let you fail. It's a pretty special place to go and grow your career.
Another good lesson for young people is go into the office. Don't stay remote, because you haven't been there yet. Maybe someone older has, and remote is good. But talk to that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's a tough one. It really is. I mean, look, what employees expect from their employers is ultimate flexibility and respecting their boundaries, basically, when it comes to remote work. I'm going to work when I want, how I want, and I will deliver for you, but you need to respect those boundaries. But I'm with you. This in-person experience is invaluable. And our executives are all here. We have an innovation center, and then we have a corporate center, all in Richmond. They're all here. They come in pretty much 5 days a week, sometimes not, but the vast majority of them are here 5 days a week. You have an opportunity to eat lunch with an executive, which if you're sitting at home, you will not have that opportunity. You have an opportunity to knock on the CEO's door and ask him a question, which you will not have if you're sitting at home. Those are really missed growing opportunities and ways to showcase yourself. The other thing is cultures are built on relationships, and this works, right? This works, Zooming and Teamsing and all of that good stuff. But doing it in person, there's just really nothing to, I don't know. It's not replaced by this Zoom experience. It's close, but there's something missing.
And people felt it. You can tell people felt it.
So the way I've been thinking about the workplace is make it a destination. I'm not going to force you to come in, but I'm going to make it a destination, meaning I'm going to have a strategy session, and I'm not going to have a remote capability. So if you can't come because you don't want to come, that's your choice, but I'm inviting you into the strategy of the company from a talent perspective. This might be something you'd want to attend. So you can do that from a work standpoint, but we're also trying to make the workplace fun. We do these leadership, I call them silliness, because put up a dunk tank and in the summer, and have one of your leaders get in the dunk tank and have your associates come and dunk them, and then have some food at it afterwards, relatively inexpensive, fun stuff. And you'd be shocked how many people come out to do, fun things with their.
The only thing you have to watch out for is the person that's really, really intent on dunking you. Not just fun anymore. I'm going to get you.
Oh, yes. Well, HR is watching them, right?
Exactly.
We need to have an intervention.
Well, on the opposite side of that, talk to me about what your thoughts are on the quiet quitting stuff.
Yeah. Gosh, it's a shame that people call it quiet quitting, because it really is unfair to the folks that are basically saying, people used to ask, I don't know, back in the 80s, do you work to live or do you live to work?
Right.
And folks now are saying, I work to live. And I'm going to give you my all when I'm working, and we're going to set boundaries, hopefully collectively, me and my manager, and with the company's blessing. But those boundaries should be respected. And frankly, I think people having those boundaries is good for us as a society, because marriages are going to be more successful. Children are going to have more interaction with parents. Dogs are going to be better taken care of, just generally. And we're going to have more time to interact with our communities and volunteer and do good things outside of the workplace. I grew up, and I know you did too, where you build hours and your value was based on how many hours and what revenue you're bringing in. And if you didn't make the cut, you were just, okay, there's somebody else in the wings who will replace you. And I think the world's turned on its head, and probably for the better. Now, at the same time, it's a relationship which must not be abused by either side. So I'm not going to abuse your boundaries. I'm going to respect them. On the other hand, I need you to deliver on the work that we've agreed to. And I think that would be a beautiful thing, frankly. But the quiet quitting is just, to me, a terrible way of talking about a phenomenon of people making a decision that work has its place and it's incredibly important, but it is not life.
Yeah, and I work with a lot of people also in entertainment and sports and whatnot, and they can tell you that 100,000,000% that
I bet.
There's times that are more intense, there's times that are less intense, and at the end of the day, if you put the right people together, committed to the same goal, then they'll get it done. And again, it's just like a sports coach. If you can get the buy-in of the player towards the champ to win a championship with the team, that player will do everything for you. If you keep telling him what to do, then it becomes like a problem. And I never liked the work-life balance term. I know it had a good intent, but you don't stop work to then have life and then stop life to have work. We're all in life right now.
Yes, so, that's right.
There
is balance in it. There is balance, but sure. I'm with you. Like it also is a overused term that was never really ever going to work. Especially with global companies, there's stuff going on. I mean, I had a 4:30 conference call 2 days ago in the morning, and luckily I'm a morning person, but I'm okay with it because maybe Friday afternoon I'm off or whatever. You just do what you gotta do. Right. So yeah, my sister lives part-time in Richmond, but she works for a California company, and she just she works through dinners. She works till 9 o'clock, but she gets to live here part-time so she can help me take care of my parents. Like, that's pretty special. That to me is getting it right. And nobody's going to accuse her of being a quiet quitter. She's just changed her schedule.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's spectacular, because that is what people want. They want to have a life and not miss the special moments. So that kind of leads to my second to last question is, what role do you see, and you've kind of talked about, what role do you see business leaders who care right now, ensuring that their employees have, there's all types of well-being. There's financial well-being, physical well-being, and mental well-being, to make sure that that employers are treating like your sister the way they should be treated. What role do you see them having?
Yeah, well, I think in a competitive, when you're competing for talent, you really don't have a choice of considering the whole person, and whether you think that's the right thing to do or not, in my personal opinion, that is the absolute right thing to do, is treat your associates as a whole person and understand all parts of their well-being. And where are they, as a manager, I need to be attuned at all times about, on any member of my team, where are they sort of like not optimal in whatever piece of that well-being is, and what can I do to help? And frankly, employers should want that. They should want that because if they don't, they're not going to get the talent that they want, and they're certainly not going to get the productivity that they expect. Because I have family members that suffer from mental health struggles all their lives, and they cannot physically be at their best when they're in those moments. And we have to address that as a country, as employers, as families. And when you do it successfully, then they are so grateful for that you've given them the grace to heal themselves, to be able to come back in the workforce, and they'll work twice as hard for you. Yeah,
when we created Leaders Who Care, it was basically proven that that's the only way you're going to get the best talent. So like you said, there were some that just initially did it because they realized to get the best talent, but they saw that the economics of it actually worked out well.
Yes.
And to be sustainable, and you hit on really good points about family and community. Again, when you go home to your family, and how you're talking is being heard by the kids, the dogs too, but in a different way. And that's affecting what they're thinking about, consciously or not, about their future. Well, I don't want to do work. It sounds terrible. But like
Right.
you come back with a negative attitude all the time. Or if you come home or you're home and you're just going for dinner, I got to tell you what happened at the office today, what we're going to be doing in 2 weeks and this and that. And then they get that too. And
Yes.
you want to talk about really sustaining for the family, and then that goes into the community. It's the way to go. And corporations, there's a video that's been out on YouTube since, God, I think 2014 called The Corporation. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have not, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, it talks, the first corporation was allowed based on the fact that no acquisitions or mergers. It had to have public benefit, and it had to be good for the community. That's what a corporation was, until we decided to have no accountability for maybe executives in a public company, maybe,
Right. Right.
and all sorts of other stuff. And but it's interesting.
Well, it became that, corporations had a duty to their shareholders. That's
Right.
really what happened. I mean, putting aside accountability for our executives, which is, a problem I have never seen, thank goodness, but certainly have witnessed at other companies. But it really was this duty to your shareholder at all costs, and not putting together the dots like you speak of. Like, if you take care of your associates, you are fulfilling that duty to your shareholders.
The funny thing is, it's not rocket science.
I know, but it's people are wired, right? Like you said, their parents worked in a certain way. They brought home their work habits and their work ideals, and and their leadership styles. And it's hard to break those cycles for sure. But I think we're doing it. I think
We are.
I think we're doing it. People like you who are spreading like the gospel, and making sure that great leaders at companies all over the world are leaders who care. You are doing a big part of that. So thank you.
And so are you, for sure. So with respect to that, last thing I want to ask you is, in 2021, a client told me, I learned a lot from my clients. So they told me that, Mark, the year 2020, it was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought, what a great expression, even to this point, because it feels like 2020 was yesterday and eons ago also at the same time. Yes. Thing. But with all that in mind, what are you most grateful for? And also, what are you most hopeful for?
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I am incredibly grateful to be working in a place where people really care about each other deeply, particularly during this last few years, and in a people first culture, because we could have done a lot of slash and burn, and we did everything possible to keep our associates, even when we couldn't employ them, when there wasn't work to be done. And I'm incredibly grateful, because to be the head of HR in an environment, anything except for that would be incredibly difficult. So I'm very lucky there. And what I'm hopeful for, I am really hopeful that, and the more and more I'm in this space of caring about people in town, the more people I'm exposed to, is that everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid. They, when we talk about program, when I talk about this example, I use this all the time about the benefits we talked about earlier, about how our CEO, and then I see people say, gosh, wow, that would be an easy change, right? That's an easy change that can have a huge difference on people, because, they don't need to fly first class. It saves the company money. And boy, what a statement it would say, is that we're all basically the same, doing the same thing, working the best we can and the hardest. I'm really hopeful that this community first, people first, culture first is just catching on like wildfire.
Well, we're putting fuel on the fire, that's for sure.
Yes, you are. Absolutely.
And first of all, thank you for being on the series. I mean, that was fantastic. And
thank you.
And thank you. I'm grateful that you are a leader who cares, despite the fact you're an attorney as well. You're a leader who cares. I know. and we really appreciate you. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mark. You take care. I really appreciate being here.